I read that you said divorce isn't a math problem. It's a soul wound. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I was in tech for 25 years, and I was very left-brained and very logical and very black and white binary, and that doesn't help you with a divorce. Divorce is very emotionally charged,
Mhm.
and it's a spiritual problem in that you lost your connection to yourself at some point. And the way out of the divorce pain, that grief, that heavy emotion is to
Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. I am Krista's after host, and I am so grateful that you chose to share some time with me today. I have a good episode today. I was on this gentleman's podcast a while ago, and I absolutely love talking to him. He has such wisdom to bring to us. So today my guest is Jeff Kolez, and he is the founder of divorcedaddy.com, and he is currently cooking up some new and exciting stuff on there. So using his story and his lived experience, Jeff helps divorced fathers create a post-divorce life that they and their kids can be proud of. He has rebuilt his life, not from a place of reaction, but from a place of wisdom. And he created a clear vision for himself, a great relationship, and life for his family. And he helps other men do the exact same thing. Jeff explains how anger is like a currency that always collects interest. It seeps into everything, including your relationships, your health, and your peace. And now comes the work of becoming someone that your children can look up to and that you can live with. He now lives a life full of love, authenticity, wisdom, and adventure. And he is here to tell us exactly how he did that. So let's get started. All right. Well, let's just dive in. So how are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm amazing. How are you, Krista?
Awesome. I'm good. Thank you for asking. I am glad to have you on today. And I want to just jump in by asking you just to tell us a little bit about what you do and maybe a little bit of your background, your story, whatever comes to heart.
Sure. I run a program at divorcedaddy.com. The intention is to help fathers to rebuild after a divorce, to have an even better life after the divorce than what they had before. So that it's probably going to change in the near future, but we'll talk about it in the present tense. The idea is that when you go through a divorce, it's such a spiritual kick to the head
And
that you're left spinning. And I think a major part of it is that you followed the instructions. You may have followed the instructions on the box, and then you end up absolutely steamrolled, and you don't have a sense of who you are anymore. You follow the instructions on the box, but it didn't work. So where do you go from there? And so the question I work with is, who are you at the source? And how do you get back to that? Often I find that men especially, and that's why I'm serving men, is we aren't guided into who we actually are. We're guided into something that's useful rather
um,
than who we are at our core. So um, maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. Guiding men into what's useful and guide them into who they are, and that will serve in a better way. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now. I'm looking to expand a bit into a offering around psychedelics. I still haven't fully fleshed this out, but this was something that really helped me through my divorce. And I want to caution anybody looking into it that way. It's not, psychedelics aren't some sort of enlightenment. It's maybe a crack that you can kind of step through. You can see what's possible. But if you don't do the work, which is, presence every day, focusing on yourself, doing the inner work, then that won't stay here.
Mm,
So that's where I'm headed, and that's the current offer.
that's awesome. I mean, that totally plays into what you said about who you are at the core, right? Like stepping into that arena. I'm not familiar with it. I mean, I know about it and stuff, but I've never done anything like that. Um, and I completely agree that even if it's not psychedelics, you have to do the work whether you're stepping into that or not. I think that's what helps you climb out of that kind of dark space, or that space after divorce or whatever you're going through, um, feels so empty and lost, and you feel very alone in that. And I think you got to do the work anyways, right? So
100%.
yeah, exactly. I read that you said divorce isn't a math problem; it's a soul wound. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I was in tech for 25 years, and I was very left-brained and very logical and very black and white binary, and that doesn't help you with a divorce. A divorce is very emotional, emotionally charged,
Mhm,
and it's a spiritual problem in that you lost your connection to yourself at some point. And the way out of the divorce pain, that grief, that heavy emotion is to find your way back to yourself. So what worked for me was the spiritual work of coming back to myself, of learning, well, even learning who I was. I didn't have
mhm,
that sense to begin with, and that's how I ended up in that relationship and in that situation. So coming back to myself, I mean, that's what I define as a spiritual problem, is just returning back to yourself.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. Um, and not meaning to compare anything for sure, but I think as a woman, and I've gone through a divorce as well, but you kind of go through the same stuff. I had spent so many years dedicating my life and my being and forgetting who I was to everyone else, kids, you name it. And then all of a sudden you come out and you're like, crap, now what? Like, I don't know who I am. How do I go about finding that person? Like, where do you start? What's some of the things that come up? Like, what do you hear from men that are coming out of that and in in their biggest challenges and what they're facing?
I I agree that it's a similar situation for men and women. I had somebody on my podcast yesterday. I was speaking to somebody who helps with midlife crises, and he said that 80% of his clientele is female. And I said, well, why is that? And he
Mhm,
said, well, when typically in his experience, when women feel off, they'll look for a solution for that. They'll go and feel into that. Whereas men look for solutions. We're very driven to go and fix this problem, and
mhm.
I don't think emotions are something you fix.
Yeah.
Um, so I agree with you that it's a similar experience, but I think the approach is a little different. Men need to have some sort of action associated with feeling the emotions. So that would be the nuance there. Um,
Mhm,
I think that we just men simply aren't taught to listen to the emotions, to feel them. Um, like I did a talk on grief the other day, and on top of grief, you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel sadness, you're going to feel depression. But underneath that is the grief. That's the primary emotion. All those other things are secondary emotions. So that's what I find men are dealing with. They're dealing with those secondary emotions, but they never get to the grief,
Mm,
like actually processing that and sitting with it. In order to deal with it, to handle the grief, there's no other way than to go through it. I mean, you could run from it, but that just disconnects you from yourself, and it's going to keep coming up over and over again. The only way you can really deal with it is to really feel it and listen to what it's telling you. So, yeah, to answer your question, I find the challenge men have is running away from those emotions or repressing them. And running away can be um, smoking weed, drinking, chasing pleasure of any kind.
hmm Chasing a way to numb that so that they
To
don't
numb
have
it.
to feel
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very similar to addiction and
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. It's like the problems aren't the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the whatever it is. The problem is here and here, right? It's in the mind and the heart. So you have to actually address that instead of suppressing it with all that stuff. So,
I
um,
heard an I heard an interesting insight the other day that addicts was I can't remember who said this. Stop me if you know. Addicts feel are just as likely to um what's the term? Regress. That's not the term.
relapse.
Relapse, thank you.
Hmm.
Over a positive emotion as they are a negative emotion. So if they have a
Hmm.
good day, it's because they're feeling emotions, and
Yeah.
that's overwhelming. I just found that surprising. I learned that recently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I think the same can be said for not allowing yourself to sit, like you said, in your emotions. Like we're not used to sitting in silence with ourselves. We're used to busy fixing, like men are big fixers, or they're providers. And so they're doers, right? They're not used to sitting in that emotion. But that's really difficult for the average person to just sit in it because that requires requires something that we're just not trained to do, you know? And I think for men, that's like a whole, it's like a level up for them as well. Cause as a woman, I can sit easier in my emotions. It's not easy and it's uncomfortable, but I know what that feels like and looks like. A man doesn't always know what that looks like, or it's very scary.
I had no language for any of this before my divorce. I
Yeah.
knew sadness and anger, and
Mm,
sometimes it came out as sadness, sometimes it came out as anger, and that's it. And I think it was Brene Brown who said to be emotionally literate, you need to be able to name 30 emotions and how they feel in the body.
yeah.
Um, and I don't even think I've gotten there, but I can name quite a few. But again, before this, nothing like just rage or sadness. And why aren't we taught that anymore?
I don't know. I interviewed a psychologist recently. She had the emotional wheel behind her on a pillow, and I mean, there's like dozens and dozens of emotions on there. And same thing. Yeah, I could probably name you like, maybe 10 off the top of my head. But we really have five core emotions that we ever really understand to list. And they're very, very basic. I don't know why we're not taught that. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense to me.
What I'm kind of ruminating on these days is the idea that we don't live in a society that has valued wisdom. So
Mm,
we aren't passed down that wisdom anymore. It's especially around emotions, and emotional intelligence is becoming very valuable, especially in the corporate world. I don't have an answer as to why yet. I'm kind of looking into it at this point, but it feels like that chain was broken maybe a generation or two before us.
I'm noticing more and more tribal stuff from Indigenous people in here, Canada and in the US. but just coming back to that and trying to instill that elder wisdom, in female language, it's sometimes called the crone. And how do we train our kids and our youth with that wisdom? I agree. There's a broken chain there somewhere, and we just don't value that, and we need it back.
I was at the MAPS conference about a month ago, the psychedelic conference in Boulder, Colorado.
Hmm.
The talks that really, really stood out were the indigenous elders. And they were like, do not screw around with this medicine,
Yeah.
learn to respect it,
Hmm.
sit with the emotions. That's what personally, that's what I was missing, is like that guidance into those tricky areas and then how to navigate that. I got
Hmm.
none of that. And I was, and I'm doing my best to rebuild that chain for my kids.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard to reforge it.
What are some of the ways that you're doing that with your kids?
Letting them screw up. If I can tell you a quick story,
Yeah,
and then
please do.
I'm there to help. Um, both of my kids just had their first relationships. Not just, but over the last couple of years. And my oldest had his with a girl who um, was not kind afterwards.
Hmm.
She took one of his hoodies and burned it on Instagram Live. She spread all kinds of rumors about
Oh my
him.
goodness.
Was harassing um, was harassing him when he was at his mom's place. So had people texting him. It got to the point where we had to call the police and get a restraining order. And then he started dating his second girlfriend. Um, and then he broke up with her because he was afraid that she was going to do the same thing that his first girlfriend did.
Mhm.
So I've been trying to drop in and just give him a bit of wisdom as he does this. And the thing I told him was, life is hard. It's going to throw curveballs at you. It's not going to be kind all the time. But your job is to, keep your heart open even when there's that unkindness happening. So I'm there when he encounters, when he falls, and I try to pick him up and give him that lesson afterwards. Um, he did break up with her, but then a few months later he got back with her, and I think he's learning a lot about relationships that way. Um, his second girlfriend is much much different relationship than his first one, and it's nice to see that growth.
Mhm. Yeah, it's nice for him to experience the flip side of that too, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
I
tough watching him go through that.
Mhm. It is. As a parent, it is excruciating to watch your kids fall down. And I have made the mistake in the past of trying to pick them back up and not allowing them to pick themselves back up and dust themselves off and learn from that. Because when someone else tries to do it for them, it's not the same lesson. It's not the same impact. And so, yeah, and it's great. And rebuilding that bond and that trust with your kids, especially after divorce, and really being there for them and instilling some of that wisdom in them is I think, really what our job is. It's not to fix them. It's not to control things. It's to really allow them and to guide.
Yeah. Um, my my oldest was telling me he's seeking out wisdom. It was a strange story. He went to the gym and there's an older guy there, and he was like, and my son went, I sat with him. I was looking for wisdom. And he was just sharing stories. So they're attuned to it now.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, he got that from you just in passing, in in just listening from afar, maybe, or in action, right? So it's amazing when your kids start doing that without a prompt. You're like,
100%.
yes, I win.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. And I think one of the biggest things that I've started telling my kids too is that as people come into your life and as you go through these different relationships, whether it be friends or romantic partners or whatever, that, and even in your everyday life, is that what's happening for that other person or whatever happens, that unless you've caused it is usually not your stuff. That is a reflection of them, and it's hard to see that when you're young. You take everything on and you think everything is about you. It's because their whole world is very small. It's not like as you grow, your world gets, your mind expands, but their world is revolving around them. It can be a more selfish time for young people because they don't have the wisdom and the experience. But just a reminder that honestly, someone's actions are more of a reflection of what they're going through and who they are, as opposed to what you've done. So it's key.
That I completely agree with you. I've been over that. Relationships are a mirror
Yes.
spiel with them, um, especially since they both went through hard breakups. Like this
Hmm.
is not necessarily to you. Be kind, 100% be kind, but um, the way you're treated is more about how the person feels about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lesson I wish someone would have told me when I was that age.
Oh my God, me too.
Right. If we could only go back. I know. But you know what? It's life lessons. It's just stuff you got to go through in order to gain the wisdom. We can lessen it for them and make it a little softer and help them gain the wisdom faster, but they got to go through the thick of it sometimes to really learn what they need to learn.
And sometimes it takes years. You just let them make the mistake. And then sometimes you say the thing, let them make the mistake. And then maybe 5 years from now, they'll go, oh, maybe dad did know what he was talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
You play the long game.
Exactly. One day, I'm waiting for the day where they all come back and like, you were right, mom. I'm not trying to be right, but I think it's
Yeah.
that just that little wisdom that you're trying to instill, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of being in that kind of space, what is something that someone would need to hear when they're secretly pretending that everything's okay, especially after they've gone through a divorce or a trying time in their life? What is kind of a truth that they need to face or that they need to hear to help them get out of that place of pretending?
The one that came into my mind is that it's okay to ask for help. That feels a little surface level.
Hmm.
Um, Below that, I think for men, we want to take action. That's what I wanted to do. And even if it was just something small like going for a walk or going to the gym, some sort of action. But what really helped me was learning how I was responsible for the position I was in and then doing the work so that I didn't end up back there again.
Hmm.
So my relationship ended poorly. My question was, how did I choose a person who was going to have such a bad ending to the relationship? How did I get to that place where I was so desperate for a relationship that I just chose somebody who wasn't going to treat me well?
Hmm.
And that pointed out all sorts of things to work on, like regulating emotions was one. And, maybe I wasn't in the best shape. So that was something else. Just little things like that and learning to listen to them and act on them.
Hmm. Definitely. I love the piece about personal responsibility too. I think it's a, it's kind of a tough door to open. And for a lot of people, it's so much easier to play the blame game and all that kind of stuff that comes up because that's a natural human tendency, when we're in pain. But the personal responsibility piece, do you want to talk about that a little bit, what that means to you?
there's a fun saying, when you point the finger at somebody, there's three more pointing back at you.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
there's an exercise I do, where you learn exactly what that's saying. Um, and it's fun with my wife now. We've been together 13 years, but I don't know. I still sometimes call her my new wife. Anyway, sometimes we have not an argument, but a disagreement. And we're like, "You're doing this," and then we go, and then we'll say, "Well, where in your life are you doing that?" Because that's
Ooh.
the exercise. Like,
Oh, yeah.
where are you pointing the three fingers back at yourself? It's projection, right? Like
Mhm.
you're seeing what's alive in yourself. The thing I find is when you do that exercise, when you recognize where you're doing the same thing, um, it takes all the power out of it, and you can see the situation for what it is. The other person might just be, you might be overreacting. The other person might be acting from their emotions as well, and it takes all the power out of the dynamic. So very quickly, the first step is, what's the other person's problem? So just go for it with like full emotions. Don't try to be wise. Like, what's the other
Mhm.
person doing? The second step is, how would you solve that problem for them? The
Mm.
third step is the mirror. Where in your life are you doing the same thing? And you look at all the areas of life, and they might be, not doing the dishes. Um, so what's underneath that? They're being inconsiderate, or they're being lazy. Let's use lazy as an example. And what other area of life are you being lazy? And you go, oh, I'm being lazy at work. I'm not doing the project I'm supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
So how can you use that to solve your problem? Well, if you just go do the work, you're not going to feel lazy anymore. And that totally takes the charge out of it, I found.
Mhm. So is
Sometimes the
this
person might
something?
just
Sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say, is this something that you would say to yourself, or is this something that you actually do with your wife? Like, is this an out loud conversation?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's oh damn, and you catch yourself moment.
Yeah.
Or sometimes one of us will say it to the other. We joke sometimes, like we're like pointing the finger at the other person. We're like doing that, or even doing that. It's all in good nature.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yeah, sometimes we will just say, "There's three more fingers pointed back at you. What's going
Mhm.
on?"
Yeah. So what I want to know is, what is the conversation that you need to have before you can have that open dialogue with your partner? Like, what does that look like? Because there are a lot of couples out there who are like questioning right now. They're like, if I said that to my partner, that would be a full on fight. Like, that's an invitation for a war. There needs to be some conversations before that point, and obviously some personal growth too. Let's be real. But what kind of conversation can you have with your partner to actually open the door for you to be able to do that with each other?
You got to come with a ton of humility. Like, this is what I'm describing is like after 8 years of doing this work on
Hmm.
each other.
Yeah.
This is not something I would not go in and say, what three fingers are pointing back at you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Exactly.
start with that. It would
No.
be, it might be, seeing a coach and having them introduce that tool, and you
Mhm.
bringing it back to the other partner, and you walk through it very, very gently.
Yeah.
Because you're right, 100% right. That mirror step, that third step, is brutal the first couple times you do it. You're like, oh damn, I'm being lazy.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, especially if you haven't done a lot of emotional work.
Yeah. A lot of shame and guilt there when you start pointing the finger back at yourself, for sure. It's hard to look at.
Yeah. And you build up, not a callus, that's not what I mean, but you build up like resistance to it over time. and
Hmm.
and I think it comes from trust. at some
Yeah.
point you realize that the other person isn't out to get you. And if they are, leave that person.
Right.
Um, but you recognize if that other person isn't truly out to get you, that they're simply in their emotions, then I think that alleviates a lot of that shame.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or even those words alone, being able to say that to your partner is that there are going to be times when we're really in our emotions. And what can we say to each other in that moment, right? To help ease that, and then we can go into the conversation.
I used to get upset if my partner got upset. I'm sure that's a very common thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's something I had to learn to deal with. And it's in that there's almost a pause between when somebody comes at you and when you give a response. And if you
Hmm.
can develop that pause and really get back to yourself in that millisecond, I think things have a way of turning out more positively. So now I'm able to go, whoa, this isn't me. What
Hmm.
can I do to help the situation rather than taking it on as an attack?
Yeah. I think on unfortunately, it's a very male thing to do too, because it's so hard to see your partner cry. Men aren't taught, well, what do you do with that? And then all of a sudden you freeze, or there's a rush of this either anger or anxiety or something that just can't fix the situation. You don't know how to deal with that emotion in that moment. I've had that happen lots in my own relationships. I get upset, and the first thing that comes out of my partner's mouth is, well, don't cry. You know, it's just this reaction, this visceral thing that's coming they don't know how to deal with. And they want to fix it right away. Well, stop crying. What can I do? And out of your mouth comes crap that you don't want to come out. Right? Yeah. Instead of taking that pause. I love that.
But you've got to, I think that comes from learning your own emotions, developing
Hmm.
those that repertoire of emotions. And
Yeah,
if you can't sit with your own emotions, how are you going to help somebody else with theirs?
exactly.
Um, and it's almost like, you know, if she gets upset, I almost scan my own emotions to see if I'm doing something, and then I can go, okay, what can I do to help? And sometimes it's just a hug and
Hmm.
being there to listen. Sometimes it is taking action on something, but
Yeah.
I
Recognizing the
think
difference, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, that emotional intelligence piece is just learning our emotions, understanding what they mean for starters, being able to actually name it and identify it. This is all stuff we should be taught way earlier than we are. And it's definitely not a school taught thing. So I don't know how to access that for parents, but you have to be able to do it yourself in order to teach that to your kids, right? And we're just, like you said, there's a broken chain there long time ago, and we just don't do that for our children.
No,
No.
no. And I know I screwed up with my kids at times. Then all you can do is apologize and do better the next time. I think that's what kids really want is
Yeah.
for you to learn and lead the way.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that one. I'm pretty sure I screwed up royally too. So, in fact, that's a whole nother episode. um, the personal responsibility thing, coming back to that a bit, I didn't do a lot of that. At least I didn't think about it in that way until I actually did a 12-step program, and just for emotional sobriety, right? Like my own in Al-Anon. And I really wasn't faced with being able to look in a mirror and say, oh wow, I had a part in that. I had like this, and this, and start listing these things off. Not that I was trying to beat myself up. That's not the point of it. The point of it is, how do we look at ourselves and identify all of that stuff and just give it a name, regardless of why you did it or not. It was there, And as soon as we take responsibility, we're able to go back, whether it to be our partner, or kid, or whatever, and just say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I was coming at it from an unhealed place for sure. And you only operate with what you know. And so there's always room for making amends and doing things right the second time.
That vulnerability I find is extremely powerful as well. If you say, I'm sorry, I didn't know I had that in me. If I have those moments of acting from the wound, and I go back to my wife now and I say, I didn't know that was there.
Hmm.
She's very, very, what's the word? Forgiving to that. I don't even think forgiving is the right word, but open to it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and like I said, as long as I think showing an attempt at growth, any healthy person is going to appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. You learn to hold space for other people when they're being vulnerable like that. And the more
Yeah.
vulnerable you are, the more someone else can learn compassion and holding space for you while you experience that. I think that's a big piece too, is learning how to hold space for people and not jumping in right away.
I think vulnerability is difficult for men too. Um,
Hmm.
and it's funny because vulnerability, again, to use Brene Brown's work, vulnerability is where creativity comes from. And if we're making something, we have to go into vulnerability in order to make something. It's
Yeah.
it's it's just natural. So it's something I suggest getting comfortable with and not using that uncomfortable feeling as an excuse not to go there. I know
Hmm.
way too many men who are scared of vulnerability.
Yeah, I agree. How does that look like for someone to maybe not rush through that whole part after they go through a divorce, because you just always want to get to the other side and make everything better, especially for a guy. But how do you not rush that whole section of healing and learning?
You have to sit in grief. Grief is brutal, like we were talking about earlier. And it's yeah, there's no way through grief other than feeling it. For myself, I had to grieve the person I was. Um, the version of me who went through the divorce, the relationship, my relationship, the relationship I thought I was going to have with the family, the relationship I thought I was going to have with the kids. It goes on and on. There is no timeline for grief. There's no timeline for emotions. There's no timeline for healing from a divorce. It is going to take what it takes.
Hmm.
The One of my spiritual teachers told me the fastest way, or energy moves the quickest, and I think of emotions as energy. Um, the fastest way through energy is to sit still. Stop running away from it. Stop hiding from it. Stop numbing it. Do the work.
Hmm.
And one of the things I strongly recommend is meditation. Just sitting with those emotions and allowing them to process. You have to allow grief to process. There's really no other way through it.
Hmm. Yeah. What are some other ways that you would suggest that and how to move through that, like meditation? Because I was going to ask you, like, what are some actual techniques that you suggest to your clients on how to actually do that? Because let's face it, most people, not just men, but most people aren't taught how to actually sit in it and what that looks like.
Okay, so for meditation, I suggest um, I'm going to be running a meditation cave, so I'll have a link to it. I
Okay,
suggest everybody
perfect.
comes to it.
Yeah.
But it's learning to find your center. Your center is the connection with your heart. There's going to be emotions swirling around. The metaphor I like to give is your higher self is the sky, and there are some days where there are clouds passing by it. Think of those as emotions, but your job is to connect with the sky. Some days it's going to be just covered in clouds. But your job is to find that crack and find the sky. When you can do that, you'll know it. You'll feel very centered and calm. And when you learn to navigate to that place, microdose it into your day. So if you're standing in line waiting to pay for groceries, just connect back to yourself. If you're just sitting on the bus, just scan your body and get back to that place. After that, and this is all self-guided. Once you can connect to it with that center, start bringing in challenging situations. Maybe start with something small. Maybe like, my wife didn't do the dishes again today, or, I had a lot going on today. My boss yelled at me, like smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Bring that into that center and feel where it shows up in the body and describe it as best you can. The adjectives I give are, where is it in the body? What shape is it? What color is it? What's the texture? And is it hot or cold? And just describe it the best you can. And make it feel welcome. Don't drill it for questions.
Mm.
Just allow it to be. And if it's squeezing really tight, if it's pinging all over the place, just let it do that as much as it wants to do. Your body will start to digest that when you bring it up in presence. Sometimes you can ask it questions like, what's going on? What can I help you with? And you might even get a little answer. You might get a little whisper in the back of your head. And you will find that that energy starts to move more clearly, more quickly when you do that. The more practice you get at it, the better, the faster it will move, though you don't want to pressure anything because it'll shut down.
Uh-huh.
These are very, very subtle feelings. So it takes practice and it takes time. And I do suggest a guided meditation maybe at first. And that's what I'm offering. It's free. Meditation Cave. Come meditate.
Awesome. It's very somatic, and we're not used to being in our body. We're used to being in our head a lot. And so it is really a practice to make that connection with your body. And at first, it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. I remember going to a practitioner and I was having like a somatic experiencing is what it's called, the practitioner. And I'm laying there and she's asking me the very same questions. What does it feel like? Where is it in your body? What color is it? And I'm thinking in my head, this is dumb. Like I can't, because I didn't want to be in my body, in all honesty. And because guess what happens when you're in your body? Your emotions start to swirl around and stuff starts to move, and you actually start to feel what you're meant to feel. And that can be a tough place for some people. I love it now. And I'm a lot more used to that because, like you said, with practice, and it is a very intentional practice, but it's making that connection with our body is so, so incredibly powerful.
One of my favorite sayings right now is, the journey from the head to the heart is the longest journey a man will take in his lifetime.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
that's what this practice is doing. It's bringing you into your heart.
Hmm.
Your
It's
heart
not,
sees truth. It doesn't see your mind sees one thing. It's the biggest liar in your life.
yeah,
Emotions are gonna, if you allow them to drive you, they're gonna, they're very useful, but they don't tell truth. Your heart tells you truth.
yeah, 100%. I always like to say there's sometimes a big a-hole takes up residence in my mind. And I'm like, you don't belong here, buddy. Exactly. I absolutely love that. And just allowing yourself to feel, get vulnerable. It's all of these things are not things that especially men are taught. And I think it's just getting back to like this innate wisdom we have within us. And if we can tap into that, we can learn so much I truly believe we have the answers inside of us.
Agreed. And you asked, and now you're reminding me, you asked what I teach my kids, and that's what I'm trying to teach my kids, that they have the answer. Sometimes they need a little push in the right direction, but
Yeah.
the answers are in all of us. It's just up to us on um, learning to listen or not.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So what have you got coming up? Like what's in your vault that you're going to be bringing forward?
I'm working on a toolkit like what I just described. The 3 finger rule,
Okay.
the rule about pointing the finger at somebody. Um, that's going to be in a book and a workbook, and so is the meditation, along with a bunch of other stuff. That's the next thing I'm working on. And then I really want to bring this work to businesses, especially with startups. I think that's an underserved market at this point. It's hard work with
Mm-hmm.
founders. I heard the line recently, your work is reflected by your inner state. Is that right? Your work is
Yeah.
reflected by your inner state. Yeah. So if you're chaotic inside, your work is going to be chaotic. If you have a
Mm-hmm.
team, your team is going to be chaotic. Your product, whatever you're building, is going to be chaotic. So as a founder, one of the most powerful things you can do is work on yourself.
Yeah.
And you've got all those, you might have a team of 10 people. Those are all opportunities to look in that mirror. Those are relationships. Look into the relationships, look in the mirror, and see what you're bringing, and then do the work there.
Mm-hmm. It also allows you to attract the people onto your team that are really going to serve you if you are doing the work and taking a good look at who you are, what you're responsible for, what's going on inside. You really will attract the people that are going to help you make your team and your business so much better if you're willing to do that.
And the right clients. The
Yeah,
wrong clients will cost you money. And I
exactly.
think that the more you do your work, you attract more sensitive people. And I mean sensitive in a very specific way here. I mean it like they're attuned to what you're saying and how you're acting. And those are the people who are going to build something for you that is really going to last.
Hmm.
They're the ones who are attuned to your customers. They're the ones who are attuned to the market. You want that sensitivity. So if they're noticing that you're not in alignment, they're going to leave, be it
Yeah,
clients, be it um, customers, be it your employees.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so powerful. And I definitely could not agree more. It's really easy to see a leader who isn't in alignment. And because it just trickles down like a ripple effect and can infect the entire organization.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've had my
unfortunately.
share of them working for them.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I love what you're doing and actually getting in at the ground up with some businesses and some leaders is really what needs to happen because we need more businesses like that. So where can people find you, Jeff? I know you got a lot going on, but can they still find you on your website or
Divorce-daddy.com.
okay?
That's my divorce work. And then jeffkolez.com. I'm just building that site out.
Okay.
That's going to be the work for founders.
Okay. Well, I will link both of those because I want people to be able to find that information for you. And is there anything else that you wanna say before we close?
I really appreciate. I like the work you're doing too, Krista.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate it, and I think it's well needed. And I think more of these conversations need to be had.
Yeah, I think so too. And honestly, to see people rise up out of what they've been through and just create magic in their lives and really step up to the plate and creating change and affecting those people around them that's huge. And I just want to bring more stories like that into the world, and so people can see what's possible. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate having you on, and it's always a pleasure to listen to your words of wisdom.
Thanks, Krista.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.